On a night where Tottenham Hotspur were craving a leader, someone to step forward and make themselves a hero, up stepped Christian Eriksen as another late show from Mauricio Pochettino's men saw Spurs stay within 4 points of leaders Chelsea and refuse to give up this title. This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! 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 Tottenham!
Hi guys, welcome back for another hour of talking all things Tottenham Hotspur. Please don't forget you can subscribe to the show via iTunes or Acast and get every brand new episode direct as it's released. You can of course follow us across all the usual social media platforms. We're on Twitter and Instagram at e_Spurs. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/e-Spurs page. We're also on YouTube, Pinterest and Tumblr. And for all the links to all e-Spurs platforms, you can head to our brand new website of www.e-Spurs.com. On the e-Spurs podcast tonight, we'll be talking about that late win. We'll be taking your question for our panel as always, and we'll be previewing the North London derby this coming Sunday. What a game that's going to be. But before we talk all things Tottenham Hotspur tonight, let's introduce the panel talking us through the next hour. I'm pleased to say we've got Ben Fairthorne joining us. Ben, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Brilliant, and thanks for joining us again. We've got Charles, the blogger of the Spurs Report. Charles, how are you?
Good, thank you for having me.
Pleasure, not a problem at all. We're keeping it in the family. We've got Adam Sachs on the line. Adam, how are you?
Yeah, keep me away for much longer, kid. Evening all, pleasure to be on.
Great to have you, Adam. And finally, we've got Jason back with us.
Good to be back, mate.
Good to have you back, Jace. Not the greatest first half. We're going to come to you first, Jace. But we got over the line eventually.
Well, I think the Spurs official put out that thing, sum up the winning 3 words, and I said, winning ugly beautifully. It was, it was fantastic to come. Palace in absolutely great form, and after that difficult 15-20 minutes at the start of the game, to win a game as comfortably as we did, where we were so far off our best for most of it, and we showed all that game craft that we talked about after Chelsea, particularly after we scored, where Palace hardly even got in our half following Eriksen's goal, and it was one of those really ugly wins you have to do, but it was a type of win that you need to do if you're going to win championships. And even if it isn't to be this year, there was a lot of encouragement to take from winning a game like that under those circumstances.
Yeah, really was incredible. I'm bringing you in, Ben. A lot of people probably outside Spurs absolutely gutted that we stood up and really fronted that game out. From a neutral perspective, Ben, just how impressive was that performance?
It was very impressive. To be honest, on 65, 70 minutes, I thought the way that Spurs were playing, I didn't think you were going to win. I thought it was going to be a draw, which would have almost certainly meant the title race over. I tweeted post-game that I think there has been a huge character shift in the team. I don't think it's a game you would have won last season. I still think the title will be too much for you this season, but as was just said, there were positive signs, because that isn't a game that Spurs would have won 1 or 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, I agree. I'm bringing you in early just on this point, Ben. I know in terms of your background, what you do, you're very connected well to footballers. Wilfried Zaha, we have to bring him in. We'll bring him in right now. Been linked with Spurs last summer. What did you make of his performance last night in terms of an audition?
Look, Zaha was very good last night, and he's been very good this season. He's a player that I think is a very good player. But let's not forget, he's one chance at a big club he's failed. Now that may be a little bit unfair, because he was there for the David Moyes season, which, let's be honest, wasn't a great season for any Manchester United player. But people tend to, it's a little bit like Theo Walcott. People still talk of them as developing players. Zaha's 25 this year. He's not a kid anymore. Is he good enough for Champions League level? Possibly. Interesting. We'll definitely have a discussion more on Zaha as the show goes on with you on, Ben. We're going to bring it on to you, Charles. I mean, form at the moment, that's a team in Crystal Palace full of confidence, beating the likes of Arsenal, beating the likes of Liverpool, and we've rolled them over eventually, but we battered them physically and technically. Super way to end that game last night, wasn't it, with that late winner?
Yeah, watching that, I think above all what I felt was pride, really. this is a different Spurs team to the ones that I grew up with, even sort of 2 years ago, and this is a rare Spurs team to have actually won that last night. As you said, this is a Palace team that's just beaten Liverpool, has beaten Arsenal, has beaten Chelsea within the last month. They're a team that is playing like the best of the Big Sam football, competing for every ball, tackling hard, looking fit, and Spurs had to live with them for 45 minutes, and then in the second half just slowly ground them down, and that was. You talk about, you sort of think back to the Alex Ferguson days of Man United, how they used to grind out those wins at the end of the season. They go to Stoke and Tevez would score. It felt similar to that, like just a 1-0 really tough match. And it still feels slightly new as a Spurs fan to see my team doing that. And I felt incredibly proud of the result last night.
Yeah, defying all the odds at the moment. I'm bringing you in, Ads. Christian Eriksen, as good of a player that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, many would argue he would have a chance Player of the Year for Spurs. He's been incredible the last few months. He's gone up another level, hasn't he? What do you make of his performance last night?
Yeah, definitely, Rick. First of all, at the start of the season, I think there were huge questions over his future at the club. Long term, rather. Obviously, he was in contract talks, and he did. His form did dip, didn't it, really, for Spurs in the long term at the beginning of the season. But then he signed his new deal. He got his head down. I believe he's in doubles figures now for this season, and he's scoring some crucial goals for us. I mean, just to sort of really, pop back, just to really echo Ben and Charles' sentiments regards to character. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. Last night, for the most part, it was flat. It was quite a lethargic performance. But just when you need a player to step up, a leader, like you just said earlier in the intro, it was a fantastic strike. The ball really just dipped at the perfect moment there, just in front of Hennessy. And yeah, it really was obviously the catalyst for an absolutely crucial win, wasn't it, for us? So, just to really reaffirm there, Eriksen, he's been pivotal. He's chipped in with those 10 goals you need from a midfielder too. So obviously to get to levels that we have done this season. Yeah,
he's been incredible. I'm bringing it back around to you, Jace. I think we recorded previously about Pochettino maybe not getting his tactics right against Chelsea at the weekend, but turn it around 48, 72 hours. He subbed the two players who pretty much lost their heads and turned it around. I mean, I've got to give the manager credit when it's due, haven't you?
He turned it around for sure, but he probably didn't have too many options to make those two choices at half-time. In fairness, I think probably a lot of us were screaming that Wanyama should have gone off, and Moussa Dembele was also walking a tightrope and had picked up a knock. So I don't think anyone was particularly surprised to see the two changes. And I think the other change that actually made a big difference in the game, and I'm certainly not saying that's why we won it, but it definitely made an impact, was when Sakho went off, because he was so close and physically battling Kane throughout the evening, and as soon as he went off, Kane just found that extra little half a yard of space. They weren't quite as tight to Kane, and Kane of course was involved with the ball across for Eriksen. So I think the combination of all sorts of things came in our way, and we probably did get fortunate, let's be fair, that Wanyama didn't go, because as much as Andros Townsend I think did like Victor Moses, didn't he? He was already going down before Wanyama got him. Much like Son Saturday, once you've been booked, you definitely can't go sliding in like that. And I think Wanyama's reaction looked like he was expecting the red card. And I think I tweeted as well before the game that John Moss is such a poor referee. He always loses control of games. There's always a big controversial moment. It could go for us, it could go against us. And fortunately, for us, it went our way, because I think once he gave the foul, everyone was expecting that red card to come out.
Yeah, and the thing you would say, Jace, on Wanyama is he's been very good this season in terms of discipline, where when he's been booked, he has managed to carry on throughout the game and avoid that red card. I think he got 3 sending off last season for Southampton, so he's definitely improved that in his game. But just for that one moment last night, just seemed to lose it a bit. Then he lost his head at that moment, but he knew from then on he was walking a very, very dangerous tightrope.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it wouldn't, of course, don't forget, it wouldn't have just been getting sent off last night that would have had the impact. He would then have missed the Arsenal game Sunday. So, I think that would have been in Pochettino's mind as well. And we're short in midfield with Dembele struggling away with with an injury, an ankle injury or something, we certainly don't want to lose 2 players in the middle of the pitch and be down to with Winks already out. So I think it was important that they both went off there and then.
Yeah, and bringing it to you, Ben, another player last night that really stood out, having lost Wanyama and Dembele, was Eric Dyer. He's been linked recently, Ben, with a move away from the club to Manchester United. Just how good is Eric Dyer when you're looking at him as a player?
I think he's very good, and I think it's not at all surprising that he is being linked away. I think there are going to be, you have what I would probably say 4 or 5 standout players at the moment, and from what we're hearing at the moment, I think Spurs will keep their big players this summer. I don't think you're going to lose any big players at all, Dyer being one of them. Next summer, who knows? But I think what is important for you is this summer is you keep your big players and you add some real quality, because I think Spurs are in a fantastic position in the league. And Wanyama aside, they've been pretty horrible summer signings.
Yeah.
With 2 or 3 decent signings, who knows where you might be.
In terms of Tottenham, you would probably argue that we've probably got one of the best first 11s in the league. With that being the case, would you agree it makes the job even harder to try and attract the players to the club because they may know they're going to be a backup to those in the first team? Or are you saying we need to go and get better players than what we've already got in that first 11?
Yes, I think that's exactly what Tottenham need to do. Tottenham have got 11 very good players. I think the squad is short, and that perhaps is, evidence of the Champions League and Europe. But yes, I think while you have very, very good players, what I think Tottenham need to do to hit the next level, they need to go and sign out an established world-class player. Not a Bale, not an Ali, and make them world-class, a world-class player. So basically, in short, Tottenham are putting their balls on the table and saying, this is what we can do now.
Yeah. That's a very good, analytical opinion on that one. I mean, we'd love to see Spurs show that ambition. We'll definitely, come on to this more in terms of the questions from the listeners. I know they are keen to have some news on transfers. Let's bring it on to you, Charles. And again, I have to say, another player last night that came on, didn't have a bad game, was Moussa Sissoko. What did you make of his performance?
Oh, God, do I get the Moussa Sissoko question?
I'm sorry you did. I'm sorry.
He was all right, but he's done precisely nothing in his Spurs career to suggest he wasn't an utterly abysmal signing at £30 million.
Yeah.
He's just technically not very good. He's got a really poor first touch. He makes Andros Townsend's first touch look good. He's obviously got no confidence at all, understandably. And for £30 million, he's been a really poor signing. That all said, we got better once he was on last night, and incredibly slim pickings, but this was one of his better performances because he didn't do something absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I agree.
In fairness to Moussa Sissoko, I haven't seen anyone stand on the ball in the corner quadrant as well as he has. And that's a skill we haven't had all season.
Yeah, we wasted a good 3 minutes there, which was.
He won the battle of the Moussas, didn't he? And he just stood on the ball in the corner quadrant, and he should be applauded for that.
£10 million a minute, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. But they were 3 vital minutes.
They were 3 vital minutes. Sticking with you, Charles. Anyone else you want to say to impressed you in the game? I know it wasn't a great first half performance. I mean, granted, Eriksen's goal came at a very vital time for us.
He didn't score, but throughout the game, Harry Kane was absolutely superb. Like, you could see him lifting the team with his effort. He was getting absolutely battered all night by the Crystal Palace players. His ankles were kicked probably 4 or 5 times. He kept on getting up. He was driving forward with the ball, coming and getting it, and you could see him lifting his teammates. And often the sort of concern with Lloris in goal is, can you sort of at those moments can you really inspire your team with your actions when you're a goalkeeper? And obviously there's different styles of leadership, but Kane really stood up last night, and even though he didn't get his goal, I thought he was the man of the match.
Palace play with two wingers, and every single time they had caused us a problem, it came down Carl Walker's side. Not once did they get beyond Ben Davies, and Vertonghen also covered for Ben Davies. And having missed out on Ben Davies on Saturday, you saw what we missed on Saturday with Ben Davies' display last night. Nothing flash, nothing that leapt out and caught the eye. No fantastic last-ditch tackle or anything, but just real calmness and an assured performance. And as I say, Palace actually posed no threat down that side of the field at all. So, you know, it was good to see him back. And we all know he's not Danny Rose, but it was a bloody solid performance from Ben Davies last night.
Was, and it will always beg the question at what if. Let's bring it to you, Ads. I mean, at the moment we're 8 points clear of third place Liverpool with a game in hand, meaning a North London derby win, Champions League all but secured, and finishing above Arsenal. Just how crucial is this North London derby? I mean, it's one of the biggest in years, isn't it?
We seem to be saying that every season now, don't we? Well, I mean, I think the fixture itself, you know, it speaks for itself. Arsenal at home for any Spurs fan. This is, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's the first game you look for, isn't it, as soon as the fixture list comes out. I think, given, obviously, the fact last year, the season ended how it ended at St James's Park, the fact that we did relinquish second place to them in the circumstances that we did, I think it's really just adds the edge to it now for us to really, I suppose you could say, exercise this demon, isn't it, for us to finally just wrap that up, just put that hoodoo to bed. I think as time's gone on down the years, you could talk about these bogey teams, these bogey grounds. We've done that, so this is really another one, just another monkey to get off our backs, really. So it's a massive game for us. And you say that, obviously Chelsea play Everton early, so who knows? We could very well be in a situation where we cut it down to 1 point. But we had the opportunity last year, didn't we, in the 2-2 at the Lane to hit top. I think we was the early game, wasn't we, then? And obviously we didn't take advantage of that. But I just think the motivation this year round, we're certainly a team that has never really shirked away this season when we have had the opportunity, obviously, to strike first. Obviously, the likes of the games against Bournemouth, against Watford, where we've shown that character, obviously, to get those points on the board early before Chelsea have played, obviously, to give them that pressure. But you look back through the season, the City game, the 2-2, the West Ham game where we got 2 goals in the last couple of minutes to turn that game on its head. I think that character really will be key. If we can just display that in this game, I think that will go a long way. That will be the difference for us on Sunday if we are to finally get that hoodoo off our backs there against the Arsenal.
Yeah, I completely agree. And bringing it to you, Ben, just again from a neutral perspective, this Spurs-Arsenal debate at the moment, I know a lot of it seems to be very much hyped in the media with regards to the two clubs and where they're at. But from you, from a neutral perspective, what do you see Spurs and Arsenal at the moment? One club making more progress than the other?
Well, I mean, in terms of progress, there's no comparison. Arsenal have completely regressed and you've completely progressed. I mean, I think, when you these big games come up, a lot of the papers do a combined 11, don't they? The weekend before the game, how many players from each team get into a combined 11, and to be perfectly honest, it wouldn't be very happy reading for Arsenal at the moment. With the exception of probably Sanchez, I don't think you could guarantee another Arsenal player will get their combined 11. Now, if you'd said that, 10 years ago, I think people would have just laughed. So, I mean, it's just testament to how far Spurs have come.
It really, really is. It really is, like you say. Bringing it to you, Charles. Mauricio Pochettino, after the Crystal Palace game, was adamant, saying, we're not thinking about being above Arsenal. We're thinking of closing the gap on Chelsea. And if we are to win trophies or win big things, the mentality here must be bigger. It's a great, like I say, he does reel off some fantastic words. Do you think we believe them as a whole as a football club?
I think we're coming to understand what he said at the end of last season when he tried to urge Spurs fans not to obsess about finishing above Arsenal, not to make that everything. And the point's been proved this season. Yeah? If our only aim this season had been to finish above Arsenal, we'd be finishing this season 5th. And that's just not what we want at the moment. So I think his point last season maybe was misunderstood and caused some anger, particularly in the context of that absolutely ridiculous final couple of games. But ultimately, there's bigger fish to fry than finishing above Arsenal. and there's a league title that's still not within reach, but just about within sight. And as long as that's there, and even the remotest possibility, that can be the only focus. I'm with Poch.
Completely agree. Bringing it to you, Jace. I mean, we have to go back to Christian Eriksen very quickly. I feel like we don't want to skirmish over it, but this run of form he's been on recently, is he unlucky to not maybe be considered as one of the Spurs players of the season? He's been in inspired form, hasn't he?
He has, but as we've said in previous weeks, I think it's very hard to pick Spurs player of the season, because if you say that to nominate three, then which of one of the three you're going to then leave out for him? It's the whole team has done, every single person has done the jobs that they're in the team to do, and as good as he has been, and I don't want to play him down at all. We want him to provide assists, we want him to chip in with goals, and he's doing it just the same way as we want Kane to score goals, and he's doing it just the same way as we want Toby to do clean sheets, and he's coming up with clean sheets. It's that whole unit that's working so well, but that each and every player seems to be chucking in 7 or 8 out of 10 almost every single week, don't they? And that's a great thing. But he's certainly in great form, and I think I've said as well, that axis of Kane, Ali, Eriksen works so well, and each one of them makes that system work. Don't forget Christian Eriksen's assists. If Dele Alli's not making that run, then it's just a lost ball that goes out of play. So every single person has to get their part in the role right, and at the moment all three of them are doing it.
I mean, it's crazy, this form of Eriksen. I think it's 11 assists, 5 goals in his last 12 games, been involved in 15 goals, 12 appearances. He's made more final passes last night and created more chances than any other player on the pitch. I mean, the stats are there for everybody. He really, really has come on, and such a pivotal player for the future. Bringing it to you, Ben. Again, we're looking at this Tottenham squad, and like you've said there has to be an ambition to really look to improve the squad. Tell us, in your opinion, if you were looking to go and get a world-class player, who would you have in mind, and what position?
I think, I've said for a while, I think you need an equivalent of Kane. I think Son's done well when he's been called upon, but he's not a player of exceptional ability, and he never will be. He's a decent squad player. If you're talking about getting to quarterfinals of Champions League, 2 good cup runs, 38 Premiership games, you're talking about 60 games a season. Harry Kane can't play 60 games. So I think you need an exceptional striker to complement Harry Kane. And I also think you could do with another exceptional creative midfield player as well. Someone who can unlock defences at Champions League level. Obviously, Isco has been banded around for the last 18 months. Zidane likes him. Will Zidane be manager next year? If they blow the La Liga title, maybe not. So I would be looking at an Isco-type player and another world-class centre-forward.
Yeah. What do you think, Adam, realistically? Isco, like you said, has been mentioned there by Ben, is that a kind of player we should be looking at for this squad? I mean, he makes the point there, Ben, with regards to, maybe Son has been a squad player. He's contributed a hell of a lot of goals. Have we got the money there to fund that? What do you think?
Well, I think, firstly, obviously, we're banning a lot of names around across this front three. I think those are areas where we can reinforce in terms of on the left and on that right-hand side, which, of course, is an interchangeable front 3-4. But I think first and foremost, in terms of looking forward to acquisitions in the summer, I think first and foremost, the main asset we want players who are going to buy into that mindset, of that pressing game, who are willing to drop back, to go forward, and like you say, really to retain the door and to buy into that mindset, really, like I say, of playing this style set. So we talk about equivalence of Kane in terms of quality. The players that maybe very well are out there for the right money, but in terms of that mindset, in terms of that willingness to learn, in terms of that willingness to run, in terms of that willingness to sacrifice themselves for the teams, I'm not too sure. And in terms of the practicalities, you talk about finances. I saw some words from Pochettino a couple of days ago saying that we're going to sell before we buy. If players don't want to be here, they can leave. I suppose given the squad numbers, I think it's much more a matter of quality and quantity these days. It will be interesting to see who does make way in the summer for anyone who does come in. But like he said, anyone who does come in, it will only be the very, very top quality, and it will be players with that mindset who are willing to put themselves on the line for the team.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And coming to you, Charles, a player that has been linked away recently in the papers, we haven't really spoke about it much, is Kyle Walker. I mean, if anyone saw that celebration last night, I wouldn't say that's a player who's had his head turned and wants to leave the club. What did you think of it? Because he had a bit of a torrid night up against Sahar, didn't he?
I thought there was an awful lot of bullshit about Kyle Walker, to be honest. I don't think he's in any danger of leaving. I think he wants a new contract because he's 26, he's in his prime, and he's about to, his next deal is going to be his big one. But there's absolutely no way that Spurs would let him leave. It's certainly not to Man City. So I think, just people need to. People need to relax. He's not been in great form the last couple of months, I don't think, compared to his extremely high standards in the previous 18 months. But that happens. I think he's probably not quite as fit maybe as he's been. I'm sure all these England games have taken the toll, and he wasn't rotated as much as he has been at the start of the season, because I think for a while Pochettino lost a bit of faith in Trippier. So he was okay in the first half, and I thought he was outstanding in the second half. The athleticism that he was showing at the end of the game when Palace players started to tire, that was him coming back to his best. So I am, about as worried as Kyle Walker leaving as I am about an asteroid hitting my apartment right now.
Let's bring it on to you, Jace. What do you think about that Kyle Walker story? Is that anything we should be worried about?
I'm not worried about losing any of our players at all. I think we know from all the contract renewals that we've done, I think it's pretty clear that we want to keep all our best ones there, and it's more about adding to them. But the importance is keeping them there. If we can't add those quality, we certainly don't want to see the quality in the squad go down. But it's up to him, isn't it? I don't believe all the speculation, but if he really throws his toys out the pram and says, "Look, I want to go," we talked off air, I think, earlier in the week, didn't we? And we said of our key 11 players, which is the one that you'd allow to go, he's probably the one. He was my answer that I would allow to go if we got the right bid, 40 million quid or whatever. Then we would definitely miss him. He brings that pace and dynamism and everything to the team. But of the current 11, if you think of their backup player, the gap is closer between him and Trippier than it is between, I don't know, Eric Dyer and Cameron Carter-Vickers in a back three or something like that. So he'd be the one that, if he really wants to go and he's adamant he does, then I'd say, okay, if we've got to lose a right back, then I'll lose the right back. But don't get me wrong, I hope he doesn't go anywhere, and I don't think he will.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Ben, very quickly on that? He's a northern lad, obviously, so the papers are obviously running with Man City and Man United. Is he up to that level in your opinion?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's very, very good. The word athletic was just mentioned. It is the modern fullback. It's certainly the modern fullback in the Champions League. They have to be able to, run the wing. I think he is. I said it at the start of the show. I think Spurs will keep all their key players this summer. It's pretty much guaranteed Champions League football. I think you will keep all your key players. But I think to keep them all the season after, you're going to have to win something next season. Spurs have got to ask themselves a question now: where do we want to be? It's the second consecutive year you're going to qualify for the Champions League. Great, but where do you want to be? Is that enough? Because that isn't going to be enough for some of the players in the Spurs squad. We've seen it, time and time again. Champions League football at Liverpool wasn't enough for Suarez. Yeah. Champions League football at Arsenal wasn't enough for Fabregas or Van Persie. Where does Spurs want to be? That's what you've got to ask yourselves, and that will be reflected in the transfer market.
Yeah, the $1 million question, as you say there. We've now 74 points Premier League this season, our best ever return with 6 to go. 8 successive league wins. The last time we done that, we went on to win the title on both occasions. Who knows what is round the corner? Guys, we're going to go for a very quick break, and after, we're going to take your questions for tonight's panel. Hi guys, welcome back to the e-Spurs podcast. As always, we ask you to get your questions into us on a weekly basis. You can do that by tweeting our e-Spurs Twitter account of @e_Spurs, leaving your question with the hashtag eSpursPod. Now, due to the amount of questions that you guys send us, unfortunately we can't always get round to reading them all out on the podcast, so Jason very kindly does answer all of the questions on our website of www.e-spurs.com. So, let's take a flavour of what we've got through tonight. Let's go first to you, Charles. We've got a question here from Zachary Felix at Z_Feely, who says, has Christian Eriksen reached the same levels as Luka Modric? So it's a nice and easy one there to begin with.
I think he's getting close. I think we sometimes forget just how magical Modric was in that that. He
used to run the games, didn't he?
He was beautiful, but because he played deeper, maybe he didn't quite sort of ring up the same number of assists and goals as Eriksen. But to even be asked seriously is about as great a compliment as can be paid to Christian Eriksen at the moment. Yeah, he's playing beautiful football. He's everything that we thought he would become when we bought him from Ajax. And he's in the perfect team for him. Like, he's not always going to have a player like Dele Alli anticipating his runs. He's not always going to have a striker like Harry Kane. He's not always going to have Victor Wanyama or Eric Dyer behind him. So it's not just what can Spurs do for him. It's what can Eriksen what can Eriksen do for Spurs? And I think he's playing absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, since his debut September 2013, that season, he scored more Premier League goals from any player outside the box. He's registered as many assists in the Premier League in the last 3 seasons than when he managed in the whole of 2014-2015 season. So it just shows you how much he's kicked on as a player. Let's move on. Let's bring it to you next, Jace. We've got a question here from Neil McClern at Niall5000, who says, will we be able to win our last 5 and win 13 Premier League games in a row? It's a big ask, isn't it?
It's a massive ask. I think when I've been asked that in previous weeks, and I've done it on the website, I've said I don't think we will put 13 wins, just because I think it's only been done twice in Premier League history. So it's really difficult. I mean, Sunday's game alone, in a weird way, I kind of hope Everton do get beat in a strange way, because I think we've got a better chance almost of beating Arsenal if Everton have lost the game than if Everton have won it, because then it will be even more pressure on a Sunday with a title up for grabs. There'll be even more of a reason for Arsenal to grind out a result to stop us, to all those types of things. So it's a really tough ask. I think you can only judge it week by week. There's none of the 5 fixtures that particularly leap out and frighten me, but you've got respect for every opponent and you just don't know. So I'd still be astonished if we win 13 straight games.
I was just going to say, I think when it comes to the business end of the season, as it is now, I look at these fixtures and I look, what have these teams got on the line when they come to face us? Let's face it, Arsenal on Sunday, well, there's no more motivation needed. They have to win. It's the derby for them. I look at West Ham, let's face it, it's their cup final, the one they wait for all season. Man United, I'll be honest with you, I'm hoping by the time we come to face them, they've got a Europa League final to look forward to, and they put their eggs in the one basket, don't they? That's the hope. But then you look at the last game of the season whole, who knows? It could go down to the last game of the season. They could be in a relegation fight still. It could go to the last day, the relegation battle. So I think there could still be a lot to play for in our games. Where you look at Chelsea's games, if they got Watford and they've got Sunderland last couple of games, and they could very well be academic games, couldn't they? At least for those teams anyway. So I think it'll be very, very telling.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Ad. It's, like I say, interesting to see how the rest of the season does play out in terms of the twists and turns. Let's bring it to you, Ben. Interesting question here, and it's good to get a neutral's perspective on this. Nicky B at Nicky Boy Brook, who says, will finishing 3rd or 4th deem this season a poor one for Spurs? What do you think?
I mean, it's a good question. If you were to ask that question at the start of the season, I think finishing 3rd or 4th, which would have meant playing consecutive Champions League 2 seasons in a row, you would have said absolutely it would have been a good season. 5 games left with a form you're on, no, you've got to say 3rd or 4th would be a disappointment. You're going for the title. So 2nd, in essence, is a disappointment. So 3rd and 4th certainly is.
There's a big difference there's a big difference between what will be what could turn out to be a disappointment, and there's a big difference between saying it's been a poor season. And I think if your expectation at the start of the season was, come on, let's try and get ourselves involved in a title race and let's push for a top 4 spot, and you finish 3rd, I don't possibly know how anyone could view that as a poor season. It may not be what they wanted, but it's definitely not poor. And let's be fair, for almost the last 20 years, we would have absolutely grabbed at this season with two hands.
No, fair enough. Like I say, I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion on that one. Let's come round to you, Jace, anyway. Question here from Youssef at Dembele, who says, is it time to move Dyer back to defensive midfield? His range of passing is so much better than Wanyama, but he has added he's been terrific this season. What do you make of it, Jace?
For me, it's not an immediate choice between the two players. It's a choice between whether Pochettino wants to go with three at the back or he wants to go with a flat back four, and I think that dictates then what you do about Eric Dyer and Wanyama. I think if we go with a flat back four and Toby and Jan as those two central defenders, then I probably would go for Dyer in midfield. But I still think we're probably more likely to see over most of those games the back three, in which case the Dyer-Wanyama debate isn't even a talking point.
Yeah, I think, like I said, when Ian was on here previously, I think he's right. A lot of it also depends on the opposition. So again, it's an open debate. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. We're going to bring the next question of the night to you, Charles. We've got MKE Spurs Stats, who says, do you risk bringing Rose back early for the North London derby, or make sure he's ready for the final 4 games of the season? It's a really good question. And we maybe just add, Ben Davies has been brilliant, like Jason has said earlier. So what would you do?
I'd listen to the medical staff. Throughout his tenure, Pochettino has been very cautious about bringing players back from injury, and that's been part of the reason why we've had so few, what you term avoidable injuries. Obviously, if someone kicks your ankle, there's nothing you can do about that. But hamstrings and muscular injuries, you can, to a certain extent, avoid. And Spurs have been exemplary under Pochettino on that score. And just because it's Arsenal, there's absolutely no way he'll change his standard approach. So Ben Davies has been fine. Let's never ever talk about Son Heung-min at left back again, though.
Amen. I agree with you on that.
I wouldn't bring Danny Rose back, but the only thing that ran through my mind was what happened the very last time we threw Danny Rose straight into a North London derby.
Scored that worldie.
That's true. That's true.
Very true.
Good omen.
We're going to bring the next question of the night round to you, Ads. We'll go with you. Paul Corfra says, with Walker starting last night and being a bit off, what do you think? Will Trippier start on Sunday? That's a big one, isn't it? Big risk, would you say?
Very good question. And I think a week ago, I would have said to you, Walker is, out of the two, Walker is the one, as opposed to Trippier, that is trusted in the big games. But he went with Trippier last week, didn't he, for what was arguably one of the games of the season, one of the most season-defining games of our season. So I do think personally he will go with Walker. Just to the fact, I think he came as a sub last week, didn't he? Obviously, he played on Wednesday, so you could argue he's relatively fresh. He has had a break. They have been interchanged throughout the season. I think as well, in terms of the pace, I think you've obviously the question previously about Rose. I think Crystal Palace played Arsenal recently, and something that really, really struck a chord with me was what Sam Allardyce said, and he said they get forward themselves, the Arsenal fullbacks or the Arsenal wing backs, and there is so much space to exploit down those sides. And I think, obviously Danny Rose, that's one question. But if we can really utilise that pace, Allardyce can really assist getting at them and really dissecting that defence. So personally, if it's a question of pace, then I would go with Walker. And obviously, if fit and ready, likewise, by all means, if we can chuck Danny Rose in, that really would be an added bonus for us.
Yeah, and I mean, Joe Robertson asked the same. Joe on the same line says, as good as a win last night was, does it show, or is Walker's place under threat? Very quickly on that, Jace, is his place under threat in this squad? I mean, I know he wasn't great up against Zaha, but the guy's got absolute pace to burn, hasn't he?
I think, as I alluded to earlier, the gap between him and his closest backup member is the smallest one in the squad. So, the one difference we saw last night, didn't we? Kyle Walker got into a couple of brilliant positions, but then you wish that was Trippier to put the ball into the box, because Walker, one crazy cross and one that he just put straight into the side netting. So I think Trippier's putting pressure on him, but for me at the moment, I would still go with Walker in the big games. I still think he's the better one, but it's certainly getting closer, and I think we have in recent weeks started to see the real benefits that Trippier brings when he plays as well.
And coming to you, around to you, Ben. Question here from Gavin at Gavin Spurs, who says, is the Harry Maguire's rumour true, and should Spurs be concerned with the speculation around our squad? That's from Anthony Pereira. So a two-edged question there.
Yes, I mean, look, I think, speculation around the squad is concerning. Spurs have had some fabulous players over the last 5 years. Bale, Modric, and Spurs fans have seen them sold. So I think, yes, they should be concerned. And you have some fantastic players at the moment. Players that would get into any squad in the world. Any squad in the world, which is fabulous testimony to Spurs.
And Pochettino for the work he's done to get him up to this level as well.
Yes, no, absolutely. And Pochettino, the very fact, we're talking about some kid who was playing for MK Dons a couple of years ago, now as a potential world record move to Barcelona and Real Madrid is mind-boggling, really. And for someone to come that far in a fairly short space of time is fantastic. So yeah, of course you should be concerned, because you've seen it happen before. So yes, you should be concerned, but I do think you will keep your squad together. I do think they will all give you a couple more years, and you have to build on that, because we don't want to be talking here in 2 or 3 years' time about Harry Kane or Ali just lifting the Champions League for Barcelona. That's not where you want to be. That's not what you want to hear. You want to talk about your own players doing that. So yes, it's concerning, but I don't think you should be overly concerned.
And that brings on nicely now to the North London derby on Sunday. Charles, coming to you. Let's go into a bit more depth in it. Just how big is it for you personally, the Arsenal, the Spurs rivalry? What would it mean to you to not only finish above them, but to really make a statement of intent in terms of the two clubs?
Well, it's about bloody time we finished above them. It's gone ridiculous that we've not, given how mediocre Arsenal have been in the last 3 or 4 years.
Precisely, mediocre is what they are, and that's my only concern, that if we are to finish above them, there shouldn't be would you agree, there shouldn't be some kind of mass hysteria celebration, because it is such a poor Arsenal side, and Spurs have overtaken them, haven't they?
Exactly that, and this is what I said earlier. Like, this is what Pochettino has been absolutely clear about. Like, we can't obsess about Arsenal. Like, obviously, as a Spurs fan, there's nothing that you're more passionate about than beating Arsenal, but there's more at play at the moment for Spurs than that. It's going to be an emotional day at White Hart Lane. The final derby before the stadium gets ripped down. With the prospect of, if we win, I think we mathematically at least. So
mathematically, we would finish above
them.
Yeah.
We all but mathematically guarantee a top 4 finish. But I think in terms of football rivalry now, I think arguably Chelsea is the bigger fish.
It's funny you say it.
In terms of fan rivalry, obviously it's Arsenal, but in terms of football, like, how good has it been every time Spurs have played Chelsea in the last couple of years? Yeah. Whereas there have been some great moments when Spurs have played Arsenal in the last few years, but they've not been great games, have they? Yeah,
and it's like Charles said there, Jace, it's what you said last week, wasn't it? That the Chelsea game is becoming more of a rivalry in terms of the competing for titles, whereas the Arsenal rivalry as such, can we argue that we're maybe overcoming that hurdle now, where it's more bigger for them than it is for us, or is that going too far?
I think they probably...
They need to win, don't they? They need to win it more.
Yeah, they absolutely do, because they've seen a season that they went into with hope just get worse and worse week in, week out. And okay, they've got the cup finals to look forward to, which at least has secured them Europa League football. We shouldn't, applaud them for that. They might not be in a Champions League, but at least they've now got Europa League sorted, so we know they'll be playing Thursday nights next year. And we know Alexis Sanchez might have a lip problem and may well miss the game with that terrible gash that he picked up last night. But no, I mean, for me, I want to win the game. Obviously, they're still, for me personally, the bigger rival of the two. I said last week I'd sooner lose to Chelsea and beat Arsenal than the other way round. But that's the way I've been brought up. It will always be Arsenal first as the dislike for me. But you're right, we shouldn't celebrate beating or finishing above them this year, because I've always wanted it to be a meaningful finish when we did it, and I've always wanted it to be against a good Arsenal side that we finished above, and they are. You know, they're closer to West Ham as a side, really, than they are to us, I feel, at the moment. So, you know, we should win the game. I just hope that the players on Saturday, despite everything that's going on, despite it being the last North London derby at Tottenham and with the titles up for grab, I just hope the players just concentrate on playing the game rather than the occasion, because the baying and such that will go on from the crowd, I think they've got to be really cool, detach themselves from that and just say, look, just focus on winning this game. Take it that we're playing Liverpool or that we're playing West Brom or something. Don't get overhyped on the pitch that it's Arsenal, and just focus on winning the game. And then if they do that, then we can all celebrate after the game.
Yeah, and that brings me on nicely, adds to what Jason's just said there about the mentality. We've seen last year, if we allude back to the 2-2 at White Hart Lane, where Spurs famously we were top for 15 minutes. Arsenal went down to 10 men. We drew the game 2-2. I know obviously we've got that game first to come, the Everton and the Chelsea game. Obviously, depending on that result, it may play a pivotal part in terms of the mentality going into this North London derby. But just how important is it from an acid test perspective that Spurs do keep their heads and focus on the job and don't get carried away? Because we saw last year, I have to say, we ended up drawing a game we should have won.
I mean, I think in terms of a barometer to progress for last season, I think in terms of, like you say, number one, you can see some parallels to last season, the North London derby at the Lane. We had an opportunity to go top. Once again, who knows? Like I alluded to earlier, by the time we play 4:30, we could very well have the opportunity to go to 1 point of Chelsea. So there'd be a huge incentive for us to win that. But also the other dimension, and I'm sure it's not lost on the players. Obviously, most of these, I think pretty much all but one of these players, they were part of the team last season that did relinquish that second place to Arsenal. So I think in terms of the motivation, I think in terms of the opportunity to write a little bit of history, and like you say, of course, we shouldn't get too hung up on it in terms of finishing above Arsenal. Because, like you say, it's a very, very poor Arsenal side. It's certainly the worst I've known in my lifetime of supporting Spurs. But I think just in terms of the significance to the occasion, in terms of what it would represent to the fans, it would be a real milestone just to really surpass that, and it would be another monkey off our back. So no, it would be a real barometer for success. And no, like you say, hopefully, just fingers crossed on Saturday, no one shirks what is a massive, massive game.
Yeah, and coming to you, Ben, what do you make of it from an outside perspective of this game? Just how important is it in the title race? Have Spurs got a chance for you still in this?
Yes, I mean, of course you have a chance. Of course you have a chance. I think it's slimish. I don't see Chelsea blowing a 4-point lead at this point. I think Chelsea's running is fairly comfortable.
Kinda, yeah.
I don't like to talk in percentages. I think it's a bit mathematical for the beautiful game. But if you had to push me, I would say probably 85% Chelsea, 15% you, maybe 90-10. But yeah, of course you have a chance. Huge game. I mean, this is the worst Wenger, Arsenal side under Wenger, no doubt. But they do need to win. They were exceptionally lucky against Leicester. It was a bit of an odd goal. I thought even the semi-final, it was quite a poor Manchester City performance, to be honest. So even though they won their last couple, I don't think they've been great. You're certainly favourites, but this is another test of character. We talked about Palace. It was a test pass.
Yeah.
You've got to know pass another one. And this is what we have seen before in very good Spurs teams, that the bottle's not quite been there. I do think something is different in this team, but this weekend will be another chance to prove that.
I like your words, Charles. I hope you're right, Ben. I hope you're right. Coming to you, Charles. Moussa Dembele is a doubt for this one. Obviously, he picked up that injury against Palace. Just how crucial is he to the proceedings that he starts for you?
Well, of course, he's so essential to everything Spurs do in midfield. I mean, there was that moment in the first half against Palace. Zaha was breaking forward, and Dembele muscled him out of the way and into a advertising hoarding. And I hope he does that to Theo Walcott on Sunday. Even if he doesn't make it, I've got faith in Dyer. I've got faith in Wanyama. I've got faith in Eriksen to dominate what's a really, really average Arsenal midfield. And we're just a better team than them. And there's a reason we're second and they're sixth, while we're creating loads of chances and they're scraping loads of 1-0s. Yeah. We're just a better team. That doesn't mean we're going to win, because nothing's guaranteed. Alexis Sanchez can smack one in from 30 yards. Hugo can have another shaky outing against Arsenal. He's had last season a couple of times. So you just don't know. But if everything goes to form, if everyone plays the game that you'd expect them to play, Spurs should win on Sunday. And that's kind of the most exciting thing about this season, is we're just really good.
And just sticking with you, Charles, team for you. If I had to say what your favourable team was, what would you change from the Palace game?
No, if Dembele was fit, I'd keep it the same. I like Son off the bench. He gives you a bit of punch, a bit of something different, I think it's a match for physical strength in midfield. So we want Wanyama in there, you want Dembele in there, and not Son at left back again.
Sorry, just to butt in on this, whoever is in midfield for Spurs this weekend, I'm sure Poch would never admit to being so unsporting, but you've got to niggle at Jack all game long, because he's wild, absolutely wild. I've not seen a player like it for many years, and I'm sure behind closed doors Poch is going to be saying to the midfielders, look, clip his heels, niggle at him, few comments, pull the shirt, because Arsenal could be down to 10 men within 15-20 minutes. He's absolutely reckless.
I wish we had Lamela for a game like this, because he is for all his sins, he's a fantastic wind-up merchant, and him on Xhaka, that would be a superbly weird one-on-one matchup.
I mean, we're just talking about the team now. I think the midfield really is a catalyst for that. I mean, I think we've seen them gone 4-3-3 or something like that, pretty much like us, with a fullbacks bomb on the last couple of games. And like you said, they have nicked a few 1-0s, 2-1s. But I think for us, if they go like for like with us, I think we are that much stronger in midfield. I think they have huge deficiencies defensively on the wings that I think that really, really could be a dangerous mindset and formation for them. But we'll see how it plays out. But I look at this, I'm looking at it now on paper in front of me. Our midfield, our front line, their defence, I only see one winner. But a game of football, a derby, it all changes, doesn't it? The mindset, the mentality, the atmosphere, there's so many variables that can really come to play. Yeah,
and form does go out the window. And Jace, for you, team-wise, for this one, huge one, tell me, would you change anything?
Absolutely nothing. Go exactly the same side, which would have been my preference for Saturday's side as well. But yep, exactly the same side. No reason to change anything. I think, we hope Dembele recovers. I know we had the question earlier about Eriksen and Modric, but for me, it's Dembele does more what Modric did for us than Christian Eriksen in terms of, picking that ball off the back four and dictating the tempo of the game and dictating things before it goes forward. So he's the closer one to Modric than Eriksen for us, but he's a massive player. We saw him dominate that Chelsea game for much of it. I hope he's fit. If he is, then I'm not in the least bit concerned about Sunday's game, and I think we will get a comfortable victory.
Yeah, and just to pick up, Jace, very quickly on Ben's point where he said about we've got to niggle at Xhaka. Equally, I'm sure Wenger will be saying the same about Dele Alli. Try and wind him up. Ali, he's been great so far this season. Obviously, he lost his head, we saw, in the Europa, and we have to look back against West Brom last season. Discipline for him, isn't it, Dele Alli? Stay on your feet, don't do anything silly, don't react if you are going to be wound up.
I don't know about stay on your feet. If he gets in their box, I don't mind him going over.
Well,
no, I know what you mean, Rick. I'm not in the least bit concerned about Dele Alli. I mean, at the end of the day, he's reacted. He's gone over the top in terms of his temperament twice, and he's played 70 games for us. So he's nowhere near the level of Granit Xhaka for going over the top and losing his head. So I think Ali will be relishing the game, and just look at his face when he went off last night with a minute to go. You could see he didn't even want to go off with a minute to go, did he?
No.
I think he'll be fine, and I fully expect him to score and be one of the big star men on Sunday.
Fingers crossed. Okay, let's do it. Let's get some predictions. Ben, the neutral, we're going to come to you first. What are you going to go for? What do you think?
I said at the start of the week that I thought Tottenham would drop points in one of the matches. At 65 minutes against Palace, I thought that would be the match. It wasn't. I still think you're going to drop points.
Right.
I think it'll be 1-1.
Okay, fair enough. There you go. Honest prediction there from Ben. Charles, for you?
3-1, Kane hat-trick, good day.
Oh, can imagine it now. Fingers crossed. Jace, to you?
2-0. 2-0, Ali and Kane.
Ali and Kane. And Ads, finally to you. What's it going to be?
My heart says a 5-0 demolition job. My head, I think we'll they'll make a game of it. I think we'll just about go over the line. We'll labour it to a 2-1.
Fingers crossed. I'm also going to go over a 2-1. I can see it being really tense. Final game at White Hart Lane in terms of the North London derby. What an occasion it's going to be. Ben, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
Great to have you on. Charles, thank you so much for this evening.
Cheers.
And Adam, thank you for coming on.
Pleasure.
And Jace, thank you as always.
Pleasure to be on, mate.
No, fantastic. And guys, we'll be back hopefully talking about a win against the Arsenal. Thank you so much. And as always, come on you Spurs.
No one can stop them. We're gonna do it like we did last year. Tottenham